one aspect of the way in which the people of God are described in the Old Testament that's maybe overlooked or missed is that it really was quite a challenging and countercultural ethic that God had asked the people of Israel in the Old Testament to embody. The singling out of orphans and widows and foreigners is to say that there was no social safety net in place for these vulnerable populations in society. If you were an outsider, if your immediate family experienced loss, or if you were, and so in that case, orphans and widows, you were really reliant on the community to take you in, to provide sustenance and care and hospitality. And there are points in the life of Israel where they're faithful to this, and there are more often points when they neglect that responsibility. The purpose of these ethics was for the people of God to exhibit in their communal life a sort of different logic, a sort of alternative way of being in the world. The ancient world was a really cruel and harsh place in many ways, and if you were an outsider, if you were an orphan, a widow, or foreigner, and those standard systems of support fell apart for you, it wasn't uncommon that you would be cast aside. The more radical and inclusive ethics of the people of Israel were not just a way to kind of keep them together, and they were not just ethical instructions they had to keep. In a broader sense, the purpose of these commands was that they would stand apart from their neighbors, and that in that ethic of inclusion, they would reflect a different way of thinking about belonging and otherness in the world. And in a world where otherness or where vulnerability often means that you are, subject to injustice and exclusion, the story that God is trying to tell through God's people is a different story. It's one in which traditional kinship structures can flex to include different people. It's one in which there are economic and labor practices that make a very intentional effort to include those who would have been at the bottom of the social ladder, if you will. The ethical life of Israel is always bound up with that broader story of God saying, I want the people who reflect me in the world to live in such a way that directs others to ask, is there a different way to be human in our world?